Welcome back to another Coaches Chat. Today, Ben and I are going to be sitting down and talking about, the new year and resolutions and change and setting goals and everything that comes along with those ideas. Obviously, being January, being the beginning of a new year, let alone being, the start of a year that's following 2020. I think that, resolutions, goals, restarting, all of that sort of thing has been really top of mind. We've seen a lot of conversations around it. So we just wanted to chat through that, give our 2 cents and a little bit of insight into how we would approach, resolutions and goal setting and everything like that too, to make sure that it is something that we can maintain, sustain, and enjoy, most importantly, long term.
Yeah, I think before we get into it, I might preface it by saying we're not anti-goal setting, obviously. We're very pro-goal setting. But I think what we want to have a little bit of a chat today is that there is a right way to go about doing it. There's a way to go about doing it, which increases your chances of that long-term success. And there's a way that going into it doesn't, right? And obviously, if we're having this conversation, we tend to see more and more people opt for the latter rather than the former. So
yeah, almost like a more efficient way of goal setting. I feel like, right and wrong, sometimes things can work better for other people, but what we have seen through working with clients and setting goals and everything ourselves to be the most efficient way of setting goals and reaching those goals is what we're going to be sharing with you guys today.
Love it. How was your New Year's break, Mags?
It was great. It was refreshing, short, but it was great. This is actually, I've said this to a few people. I've never been one to set resolutions. Sometimes, I've tried to set an intention or something like that, which maybe we'll get into a little bit later on. But this is the first year that I've really felt that it's a new year. I've usually just kind of brushed it off and, it's just another day. But this year I was like, okay, no, this is a new year. And I really took the opportunity to reflect on this past year and set really solid intentions and start taking small actions to embody those intentions. So I think this is a really appropriate time to have this chat. Yeah. But yeah, overall, it's been really great. And I'm super excited for this chat and for everything else that's to come in 2021. How was yours?
It was nice. It was nice. We just went down to the beach, which was nice it's kind of the first family holiday we've had really with Mateo, and had some extended time down there with family. And I guess to kind of like swing back to our recap episode that we did 2020. And the big thing there for me was like being much more aware and much more grateful for the things that are super important. And it was the perfect way to, I guess, start the new year by reaffirming that with some extended time, with family, for them to be with Mateo and for, Mateo to be with them as well was cool. It was really nice to see. So, yeah.
And for you and Kat to spend time with Mateo without, more distractions, perhaps.
Of course. And it, not going to lie, like it was super handy to have some extra pairs of hands around. And I'm sure anyone that has young kids, you get to a point sometimes where just having someone to be like, can you just hold her for 2 seconds while I just use two hands for this one small thing? It's a gift. Talk about like small things to be grateful for. So, but it was nice. And it also gave, Kat and I a really good chance to actually spend some time one-on-one together as well and really continue to work on our relationship too, which is important. So.
Excellent. Have you set any resolutions, goals, intentions for this new year?
I might come back to mine at the end once I explain, okay. I guess, the process. And maybe that's a really good way to go about this podcast is, when I am setting resolutions or setting intentions or thinking about the things that I want to go out and achieve and work on this year, that I do actually have quite a methodical process that it kind of goes through. And I guess given the role that we do for us, when we're working with 30 to 40 clients, at a time over the course of the year, this kind of process is something that we almost have on repeat, right? So while we might be working towards the goals of others, we're able to put people through this kind of process, this kind of thought process, multiple times, which is obviously giving us good practice at going through that multiple times. So I like to think that when it comes to our own kind of, whenever we're telling our clients to do something, it's for a reason, right? We have a reason that we want them to do it a certain way. And for us to then say that and not actually do that ourselves, I think is incredibly stupid, right? So Yeah, so my process, the kind of things that I'm starting to look at, number one is I guess understanding like change in general and motivation in general, and how the two really do align. So I read this quote the other day, which was like, a New Year's resolution is just like a socially acceptable form of procrastination, right? And it kind of resonated because it's true, you know, like, why are we, if something is so important to us that we're willing to say on January 1, I'm going to do this, why are we waiting? Why are we waiting another 2 or 3 weeks to begin down that path if it is something that's so monumentally important, right? Now, ultimately in our space, obviously those issues tend to stem around health, diet, activity, right? Which are usually, you know, 3 pretty good areas if we're talking about improvement of quality of life. So why would you want to wait that long? And typically the response is, I just want to enjoy the festive season first, right? I want to have Christmas, you know, New Year's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's obviously inherent issues in that before we've even started, we're already setting up a psychology here that to have these big positive changes is to come at the expense of things that we already enjoy, right? And that's kind of, if we talk about the MTM program, obviously something that we really try to push against and say, no, it's not one or the other. It's how do we make it all work together? How do we make it all fit together so that we do have a higher likelihood of success long-term, right? And how many resolutions, I guess, do you see? Like, you go to the gym on January and it's grand, right? February, it starts to peter out a little bit. And then typically by March, like, you're still the only one in the gym. You know, you're back to being the only one in the gym. So, that would be the first thing that I would say is, like, if something is important to you, or if you feel like you want to make something more important to you, you need to understand that either one, it's going to be a holistic lifestyle change that's going to occur, or number two, we need to find ways to integrate these new things that might not have been important to you for a little while back in with the things that are important, right? So that would be the first thing to think about. I think
just
yeah.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I think that, you know, when we are sitting down and talking to our clients about goals, or when we're talking about our goals with someone else, I think it's really important to not only identify, you know, what that new goal is, or what that, you know, the new priority that you're going to be inviting into your life is, but also what your other priorities are and where your other goals lay. Because I think, you know, if you're coming to us and your goal is, you know, to improve your health, to improve your nutrition, to improve your body composition, training, whatever it may be, if we're not aware of how important family, relationships, travel, you know, whatever else, your job, whatever else it may be, if we're not understanding completely how important those are to you and where they kind of rank in your priorities, it's going to be difficult for us to understand, okay, what kind of way are we going to approach your nutrition? How are we going to set up your program, right? So that we're able to integrate it in such a way that's not going to completely overhaul, you know, your current lifestyle and everything that you do currently enjoy.
Sure. And, you know, that would be a better practice to undertake over those 2 or 3 weeks before you start, right? Is working out what are my top 3 priorities? What are the 3 things that are most important to me? And if you have a list of 10 things that are the most important things to you, like, none of them are really that important, right? So, and I guess this is a conversation that we've had during our mentor meetings and reading Brene Brown and stuff like that, is like, pick 2 or 3. Yeah, I'll give you 3. Pick 3 things. But if you want your health to be a priority and make some changes that are around health in the coming 12 months, it's going to need to be in that top 3, which means that something that you currently prioritize as super important, which is why health isn't in there at this present time, is going to need to take a step down, right? So there's no way for us to say, hey, this is how you work that out. That's going to be something that's super personal. And to some people, you know, it's going to be a tough decision, which is probably why health has been kind of at the bottom of that priority list. Because, and I can speak firsthand, what your lifestyle looks like and what your training goals are, et cetera, you know, get married or get into a relationship or have a baby, and changes like that, all of a sudden, it's not just you. It's not just, you know, health, career, family, right? It's all of a sudden it's managing a relationship. And you know, Matea doesn't care that I'm trying to get an extra 60 minutes of sleep a night every night, right? She's up, you know, 6 or 7 times. And so there's going to be things like that occur. And, you know, it's a tough decision. It takes time to actually sit down and reflect. But think for the most part, most people don't know what their top 3 or 4 priorities are. You know, we just kind of, we look at that and right now, yeah, that's important to me. Oh yeah, that's important to me as well. Now, hey, this is super important to me. And kind of before we realize it, like I said, we've got a list of 10 things, which means we're not really prioritizing or doing anything really that well, you know? So if you are waiting until January 1, that would definitely be something that I would start to work on is, what are my top 3 priorities and what do they actually mean? How do I define them? How can I make sure that the decisions and choices that I'm making align with the things that I'm telling myself are super important to me? And, you know, and that means if training, for example, for someone like myself, who's a recreational level athlete, falls out of that top 3 behind family and, you know, career and work at MTMM, it means that if something comes up where it's like, Matea needs something and I usually train at this time, it means I always choose Matea. That's what that choice means. That's what that priority means, right? So I think that's actually harder to understand and grasp and complete a task than most people recognize. But I also think that because that's not done, that's why these, you know, inherent resolutions often fail and fail quite quickly, because something pushes up that makes them choose between that new choice, that new resolution, and something that actually is a priority. And because the new resolution isn't a priority, they make the other choice, which is fine, but we need to be aware of it, right? Because so much of it does occur on a subconscious level. The idea of change is something completely different as well. And Mags, you know, this is one that we've kind of had a bit of a giggle in the past too. Like we have this, in 2020, great example. We have this psychology with New Year's resolutions that we're going to make this huge change on this one particular day and stick with it, right? But everywhere else in our life, when huge change occurs on one particular day, it throws us completely out of whack. We panic, we fear it. Like even before changes actually occurred, impending change is a really big driver of anxiety for a lot of people, right? So if you look at COVID, right, the world changed overnight, and we've kind of seen really a lot of the issues that the community has been having, being able to deal with that and manage that and work through that, right? So if we're fearing change, big time changes in general, how does that work on the same psychology where now we're trying to make this big change intentionally happen on this day, right? And so what we sort of see is and understand is that change is ever occurring. You know, whenever we experience something, whenever we get confronted with a challenge or an obstacle or something that we haven't had to deal with before, it's hard, it's tough, it hurts. But the process of working through that leaves a mark on our brain, on our psychology, so that the next time something similar to this happens, we have a little bit of a, oh, this is how we do it. This is how we work through it. This is how we survive it, right? So every day, an event like this on some scale of magnitude is occurring. We're working our way through and we're growing and we're evolving as a person. That's a really good thing, right? But over the course of the year, we're going to come out a completely different person we went in because of that slow, you know, relatively controlled changes that have occurred over long periods of time. But that's always occurring, but we fear the big change. Yet when it comes to New Year's, no one's really setting these small, sustainable, achievable tasks to hit and occur every day on a daily basis to elicit this big change over 12 months. We want I'm going to lose 100 pounds by February 1st, and I'm just going to run a marathon by like the end of Jan. And it's like, but we've established that these kind of changes terrify you. Overwhelming never works. So why are we trying to base our whole next year setting up like that, right? And then ultimately by Feb, you've thrown it in the bin and it's like, oh, I'll wait till 2022 now, right? 8 months, 10 months of procrastination. So right. If we're making resolutions and we're making changes, once it's come from a little bit of place of reflection, yeah, I would encourage people to not underestimate the fundamentals. And that's the same whether it goes for nutrition, health, training and exercise, whatever you're doing. Most people underestimate the fundamentals and overestimate the little niches. Right. And so if you're really looking forward or looking to try to make improvements to your health, you know, start by aiming to get 30 minutes more sleep a night, right? Start by trying to add color to every meal that you eat in the form of vegetables. Start by trying to cook a majority of your meals for the week ahead. Small little changes like that you can build on are far more likely to be sustainable long-term and ultimately get you to your goal, right?
So would you say, when it comes down to actually setting resolutions and goals, would you say that setting a goal that's a bit more, not vague, but more all encompassing, something like I want to improve my health in 2021 is going to be more effective than, I want to I want to lose 10 pounds in 2021, because the something that encompasses your overall health. Then when you're putting in these little pieces here and there, such as, okay, this week I'm going to focus on water, or this month I'm going to focus on drinking more water, this month I want to focus on, having more sleep. It kind of builds up and kind of encompasses everything within that goal, rather than something that's a little bit more specific. So I guess when setting goals, would you choose more vague than more specific?
I think there's a place for both. I think that if you're coming out and you're saying, I want to get healthy this year, or I want to lose weight this year, I mean, and we can have a chat about like, well, what's the motivation for wanting to lose weight? Is a doctor telling you, hey, look, you need to lose 10 pounds? Or are you just decided that like all my issues and all my stresses and all my problems would be solved if I lost 10 pounds, right? And that's a very different conversation. But I think that, a goal, and I obviously am a big fan of James Clear. The way that he articulates it, he says a goal, you're setting the direction, right? So if you in order to get healthier, you've determined from all these other factors that weight loss is the goal. Okay, we've set the direction in motion, right? But what's more important is working through that roadmap of all the small little actions that we're going to take that are going to get us there, right? Now, 10 pounds, let's argue that is an appropriate goal for an individual, right? And we've established that it's for specific reasons, okay? They can't lose that 10 pounds at a time. They're going to need to lose that 1 pound at a time, right? Half a pound at a time, a quarter of a pound at a time. So we've got the goal, we've got the direction that we're heading. But if we look too far ahead, we miss the importance of what we're doing right now, okay? And losing 10 pounds is going to be what's the word I'm looking for? Like a culmination of the thousands of decisions that you make, every day between now and June, or now and the end of the year, right? And when we look too long-term with goals, we underestimate how much today matters. If I miss a workout today, it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of the fact that I have a year to achieve this goal, right? And so if we set too loftier goals or too general goals, then there can be issues with that too. But having something that says, okay, this is the direction that I'm going. This is kind of my roadmap for how that breaks out and how that looks. And that puts a little bit more earnest and importance on what I'm doing right now, that ultimately that's how you're going to achieve your goals. It's just those small wins day in, day out, every day, that ultimately are going to add up to achieving that big long-term goal, right? So there's definitely a place for both. Often New Year's resolutions don't start out, Mags, on an appropriate level. And that's generally, like I've said, why they don't fit. Like it's usually a case of people want big overhaul, big, massive change, and they're generally impatient for that change. 50 pounds in a year, that is, I don't think people quite understand the magnitude of what that kind of change entails, not just physically on the body and psychologically on the mind, but in terms of actual lifestyle and daily practice. That if you're looking to lose 50 pounds, like it's not really okay to miss a workout. It's not really okay to have weeks off where you don't meal prep because you get busy. Like if you're looking to make a substantial change like that, then it needs to be one of those top 3 priorities, and it needs to be one of those top 3 priorities. So when something else starts to encroach on it, you choose it.
Mm-hmm. Needs to be the top of the top 3 priorities.
Yeah. And I think that, look, obviously, if you're married with kids and everything else, it's incredibly hard. And I think that we see this a lot too, is it's incredibly hard to put yourself first, right? It's incredibly hard, especially when you do have a family or a tight social circle or people that rely on you. It's incredibly hard to put yourself first. You'll be helping them out at 11 o'clock when you've got a 5 a.m. start, right? Or you'll be driving to help them with whatever they're doing when like, I really wanted to get to bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock, right? And I think that that's the hardest part is sometimes part of a big process or part of changing lifestyle is learning and understanding how to set boundaries and how to say no and how to prioritize yourself in a way that it's not selfish, you know, like how much do you really have to offer others if you're running on fumes, your doctors are getting upset because like your blood work's getting worse, you're not looking after yourself, you're dragging, you know, no time to meal prep. If you can get to the gym, the sessions are super low intensity because you're so tired all the time. Like you're not really working towards your goal here, you know? So, yeah, I think I guess my New Year's resolution for this year was going to be say more by saying less. And it's something that I need to work. And it's obviously not off to a great start, but I promise I'm working on it. But I guess the point is, and if anyone's kind of skipped through to this point, I don't blame you, but when you are setting a goal or you're setting a resolution and you're reprioritizing, what we're saying is you need to be fundamentally aware of what that actually means and what that is actually going to entail. And I think when people set out at the start of the new year to get super healthy and super fit, they don't really define what they mean by super healthy and super fit. They don't really have specific goals to work through. They sort of just kind of have a direction. But number three, they don't realize that where health is concerned, it is so much about lifestyle. You know, it's you know, if you're serious about really making huge improvements, being on program Monday to Friday and then having a 3-day bender from Friday to Sunday is not balance. It's not going to help you achieve where you're going to go. And the longer that you have this in limbo couple of months where you feel like you're really pushing it through the week, but then really not at all on the weekend and you stagnate, that stagnation for most people is the derailment moment, right? As long as change is occurring and they can see change occurring in some way, they're able to stay some sort of level of motivated. But as soon as they hit that first block, that first real challenge, that first new set point plateau, I hate that word, but for lack of a better one right now, it's going to derail them, right? And it's just a little bit of like, okay, yes, we can have beers while we're working on this goal, but understand, like, if your goal is super significant and super important to you, which you've said it is, like, I haven't told you it needs to be, you've told me it is, that some of these actions here don't align and they're ultimately holding you back. And that's what we need to address.
Right. And I guess one last thing that we can touch on here is when it comes to picking your goals, picking your resolutions. We talked a little bit in an Instagram post recently about the idea of reflection. And I think that that's something that's really important when it comes to figuring out, okay, what do you want your goals to be? And where are we going to find what those goals, those resolutions are, that something that is as important to us that is going to allow us to, you know, continue with that goal long term.
And I think that is part of, you know, we talk a lot about perspective and we talk a lot about mindset, and it's very hard to know where you're going if you're not really aware of who's driving you, you know, and ultimately, like, it's a euphemism for our subconscious, right? Like, if we're making 30,000 decisions a day, how many conscious decisions do you think you make out of 30,000?
Not many.
10? Yeah, I don't know, 15, maybe 20. So if someone's making, if 99% of the decisions that you are making, you are unaware of the process and the motivation that is making those decisions for you, that's a very dangerous point to be in. And the best way to start to get acquainted with that driver is the reflection, is the perspective, is the mindset, is the self-awareness, and all these things that most people disregard when looking at health and fitness, right?
Yeah.
Taking on, you know, wanting to be healthier, like even it's as simple as asking yourself when you're pressed with a decision, like, what would a healthy person do in this situation, right? If you're thirsty and there's the option for drinking a can of Coke or drinking a 600 ml bottle of water, if you find yourself inevitably just kind of reaching for the Coke, like, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. But if you can have that self-awareness to stop in that moment and grab the bottle of water, you start, as again, James Clear would call, you start to like cast votes for this change in driver that you want to be kind of making these decisions for you on a subconscious level. And that's hard to start, and Brett Paperny's a good one for this as well. Once you cue in and start to take note of your thoughts, you put your subconscious on notice, right? And once your subconscious is on notice, things tend to start to change. And that is real change. That's what we're talking about. Because any kind of change ultimately, if our motivation is, should probably lose 10 pounds, or, oh yeah, I probably should go to the gym, as opposed to like, I want to be healthy for my family. It's a very different driver for motivation, right? And motivation is fleeting. So the more that we can get our subconscious on board and rolling us in the direction that we want to go, and the less we actually have to think about making healthy decisions a lot of the time, ultimately we're going to move further and further in that direction. That's the person we're going to become. So trying to adopt that change on an identity level, right, rather than just on a behavioral level is super important. And part of that, like I said, starts with working how you're going to make health one of your top priorities. And ultimately, if you can't make health one of your top 3 priorities, then why are you setting out to make these big health goals, right? You're already setting yourself up for something that you're telling me is not really that important for you. So why start down that track? In my opinion.
Excellent.
And that's all this is, Matt. This is just my opinion,
Well, I think you did a very good job of saying a lot in a shortish amount of time. But I think we will cut this one there. If you guys have any questions or would like to add anything to anything that we have said, if you have any opinions of your own, or if you'd like some help or someone to chat to about your own resolutions or goals, we are always there for you, and we would love to have a little chat. So we'll make sure the information is below if you'd like to reach out to one of the MT Mem coaches.
And let us know what your New Year's resolutions are.
Yeah.
And if this conversation has changed your approach to
if it's changed what your resolution is, and or if it's changed your approach, or had you maybe not even considered an approach to your resolution, right? Just kind of there, a challenge itself. Excellent. Well, awesome. we will leave it there, but we'll look forward to the next one, and hope you all enjoyed this episode.
Thanks, Maggie.